power-packed session on enabling brands to tell compelling stories at scale with a great set of panelists. With customers spending more time than ever before on the digital medium, brands are creating content for the same to connect with them and create a seamless user experience. With increasing conversations on the digital medium across multiple digital channels, brands want to publish relevant content with speed and accuracy. And in order to execute this at scale, every organization needs to accelerate collaboration between disparate teams and maintain uniform brand messaging. As a result, organizations are deploying multiple tools and technologies to support data-driven storytelling and content creation for omnichannel marketing. This has helped brands manage their campaign better, drive higher ROI, enhance customer experience, and govern brand messaging with a lot of confidence. So now, without wasting any time, let us hear from brands across multiple categories on how they are leveraging these technologies to create content at scale and interact with their users. I now welcome my guest for the day. My first guest for the day is Mr. Soumyadeep Chatterjee, Brand Marketing Director, Snapdeal. Welcome, Soumyadeep.
Hi, Devesh. Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you, Soumyadeep. Thank you for taking our time for this. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Rajiv Jain, Vice President, Marketing, DS Group. Welcome, Rajiv.
Thanks, Devesh. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you, Rajiv. My next guest for the day is Mr. Priyank Agarwal, Director, Growth Marketing and Partnerships, Tata 1mg. Welcome, Priyank.
Thank you, Devesh.
Thank you for taking out for this. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Vaibhav Mehrotra, Head of Marketing, Cash Free Payments. Welcome, Vaibhav.
Thank you, Devesh, for having me.
Thank you. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Chela Pandian, Chief Operating Officer, Healthcare. Welcome, Chela.
Thank you, Devesh.
My next panelist for the day is Mr. Jaspreet Lamba, VP Strategic Customer and Alliances, Tenovos. Welcome, Jaspreet.
Thank you, Devesh. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And my final panelist for the day is Mr. Ravi Magluri, Chief Technical Officer, Cloud and Digital Services, SIFI Technologies. Welcome, Ravi. So let's begin. Now, I'll begin with a very simple question for all of you. Let's say, which is the first brand that comes to your mind or which you admire for the digital storytelling? Priyank, let's begin with you first.
Thank you, Devesh. So I think there are a couple of brands which have built a very good digital story, and there are brands from different industries. It can be healthcare, it can be finance, it can be food tech. I'll just take an example of Cred, which is a fintech brand, and the concept was very simple that anyone can pay their credit card bills on this particular app. But what we have seen is that the journey that they have created, the story that they have created, and the quality of the creatives that they have used, the innovation, the creativity that they have used is really good. And because of that, the virality factor that they have created in the market is still remembered. So I think it's important from the brands, whether it's into any industry, the story that you build for the customers should be really compelling, and it should really strike the chord. It should really strike the chord in the consumer's mind, because that's what you can position yourself well, and you can be remembered for a longer period of time. So for me, I think this is one of the examples that I can think of if I think of any brand.
Great. Chela, what's your favorite brand, or what's the brand that you come to think of, when it comes to storytelling?
Yeah, there are quite a few, but I would go with Nike. And I think when I think about why Nike is such a brand is because I think they were the first to think of digital, technologies beyond just advertising. I mean, they integrated they were the first to create an app in which people could measure their runs, share socially. It kind of got into the ecosystem of runners and sports people. So that vision around not just using the tools to just build a communication channel, but to kind of use digital to get into the consumer journey a lot more deeper was, I think, something which they genuinely activated first. So I would say Nike is one of my favorite digital brands.
Soumyadeep, which one is yours?
See, I think when I was thinking about this question, two things came to my mind. That we always tend to think that digital storytelling is with respect to either ads or what is the social media stuff they're doing, and it's a great example actually what Chela said about Nike, taking digital first. So I think one of my favorites in terms of digital storytelling and very different at that approach is Zerodha, because as you know that it's bootstrapped company, extremely profitable and extremely well respected, huge amounts of quarter on quarter growth in terms of users, and not a single ad. I think they also did that same thing, right? They launched that app called Varsity, where they really took that, to educate, inform, and they didn't do the entertainment. Well, the trading that the people were doing and the money they were making, I think that was the best entertainment for their consumers. But at least the education and the information to Varsity. And if you look at, in India, majority of the companies obviously do invest in marketing and advertising, but they invest very little in actually creating content that sticks on for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. Yeah. And I think it's a genius what they have created with Varsity and that education. That content is not going to go old in the next 10 years also, because the fundamentals of trading are going to change. So,
Vaibhav, which one do you think?
There's some really good examples in by the panelists. I actually wanted to talk about a campaign, but before that, I also wanted to touch upon the Nike example that Chera had said. And what's really fascinating about Nike is that there is digital storytelling has been phenomenal, and it's not only about what Soumyadeep was also touching upon. That it's not about a campaign, it's not about the product itself. It's the whole customer experience that has been packed into a storytelling, right? Now, if we have to extend that thought process, and if we have to say that if tomorrow Nike has to launch a hotel chain, we sort of have an idea what that would look like. But let's say if Hyatt has to tomorrow launch a sneaker, we probably do not have as much of a clue, right? And that's the kind of experience Nike has created over years by their storytelling, and that I think is quite commendable. The other campaign that I wanted to talk about was how Intel and Toshiba have had created a campaign which was called as Beauty Inside. And which was, and they created these small films, about 5-minute each episodes, which sort of talked about how, what is inside drives the performance. And that is how Intel has created the storytelling. Otherwise, as a consumer, it doesn't really matter, what processor do you have. But I think that genius storytelling has taken the brand to this level where all of us do relate to speed and what's inside.
Okay. Rajiv, which one is yours?
Yeah, I think lots of brands are doing phenomenal job on the digital these days, in fact, and lots of very interesting, engaging work and good storytelling. I personally like the communication a lot in which there is some benefit to the consumer or trade or some other community, in fact. And various brands like Nike has done wonderful job, IKEA has done wonderful job, but I personally like a lot Cadbury's, in fact.
Okay.
Every year, on Diwali, they develop some content, some ad, in which they offer some benefit to trade partner, to community, or to other people and all that.
Okay.
Their last year's campaign, which won Cannes Award also, in fact, that in which that they have used Shah Rukh Khan and AI technology, they have promoted the local vendors, because local vendors, they were affected severely during pandemic, in fact. So through that one ad, they have developed that content which was beneficial for the particular community, which was highly engaging, and which generated a lot of conversation, in fact.
Right.
So conversation and advocacy is very, very important into digital world, in fact.
Right.
So I personally like that a lot. Rather, every year I wait for the new campaign from Cadbury, in fact. This year also they develop some new campaign.
Yeah.
That's what I really personally like a lot.
Right. Jaspreet, any personal favorites for yours?
Yeah, I'll actually double down on Chela and Vaibhav on Nike, one of my favorite brands. And I'll say, Nike is yes, they sell sneakers or sports gear, but they never mention that in their campaigns, right? It's personalized, contextualized inspiration. They don't sell product, they sell a lifestyle, right? They're selling a mindset, a belief, right? So when you watch these Nike ads or campaigns, it's never about buying a sneaker, right? They're trying to make you believe that you can be one of those athletes, right? Getting excited, whether it's their app, whether it's their storytelling, whether it's community engagement that they're doing. I mean, I'll give you an example. You look at if you look at a picture of Michael Jordan, right? You never think of Chicago Bulls or Chicago or anything. You immediately think of Air Jordans. They never mention that, right? It's that type of engagement that Nike has created. Now, I left India, unfortunately, when I was young, but I've got very fond memories of India, right? So I'm constantly looking at brands in the Indian market. And one thing that often comes to mind is Amul, right? So Amul has championed the art of localizing and personalizing those campaigns, right? Because no two markets, even within India, are going to engage the same way. So the ability for them to localize that campaign or have that personalized engagement, I think they do a fantastic job.
Interesting. And finally, Ravi, we're talking about basically, which is which brand particularly think you admire when it comes to digital storytelling. So, which one is your favorite? There are example of Amul, there's example of Nike, Cred, Intel, and a couple of others. Which one is your favorite?
No, I was going to go talk about Amul, but the disadvantage of speaking last is somebody would have done it already. So Jazz, my good friend, has already spoken about Amul. So he emphasized the aspects of personalization and all, but the thing that I liked about Amul was the context, right? So some event happens in some current event happens, and lo and behold, the following day, the speed with which, the agility with which they come and put a hoarding, or nowadays with digital, it's even easier for them. They comment on what is happening, and the wit, the drama, I like how they adapt every current event.
Correct.
To the Amul factor.
Correct. So one thing which is common to all these campaigns is that the amount of content which is produced in personalizing the communication to the end customers and connecting with them it's huge. Okay, and when I look at each of your categories, there's a lot of content which is produced in each of your categories also to connect with consumer, to continuously talk to them, continuously engage with them. So Priyank, I'll start with you. First thing, when you create health related snackable content on your platforms, on your own channels, what is the content strategy that you're aiming for?
See, Devesh, I think healthcare as a category has got a lot of, I would say, leeway when the content comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
One can make a n number of content, but I think the content what we feel is that the content should be very much relevant. The content should be very much fresh, which is not you can easily find a content on Google. Then there is no essence of that particular content. So the relevancy of the content. So it need not to be a very hi-fi or very jargons full of content. It can be very simple content, but it should be very much relevant, easily understandable. And I think it should be inspiring for the customers or educative to the customers. Just to give you an example, in Tata 1mg, we have our own YouTube channel with around, as if now on the date, around 16 lakh subscribers.
Wow.
And we continuously produce a content. And the quality of the content that you will see is very simple, easy to understand, but yet very much relatable. Right. And it talks about on a common problems or the common questions that a customer might have. For example, what should be my diet if I have diabetes? To prevent diabetes, what should be my lifestyle? So related to the diabetes, related to the female problems, related to breathing problems, related to COVID problems, all those content which are really important for a customer to know, these are the content that we produce on a constant basis. Okay. And that's what the key of the R is.
Okay.
Generally, as a brand, sometimes we think when we think of content, content means something which is like, something big. No, it can be a small piece of content, but it should be a relatable and very much informative for the customer should get a value out of it. So that's a core thing that we keep into mind while creating any type of content. And the authenticity of the content is really good. What the person who is speaking is not something are the renowned doctors or renowned experts who know about that particular disease in well, and then only they can put a very good show in the form of a content.
Chala, your category is closely related to Priyank's category. So,
Yeah.
do you concur with the Priyank's views?
No, I absolutely concur with. I think, see, in our case, large part of our business also comes from marketing consumer brands, right? So we have a slightly different part of the content along with what Priyank is talking about. See, my reflection on this is always that the fundamentals of content, as you rightly spoke about in the beginning of the conversation, does not change. Okay, just like human beings don't fundamentally change, what makes them tick does not change at all. I think it's just the forms of storytelling that change, the mediums that change. But what makes somebody remember something, what makes somebody take action on a piece of information, those things fundamentally do not change at all. So, having worked in Mondelez and many of these brands, I think one of the things we have realized is sometimes brand managers or communicators, storytellers, I think tend to get a little bit carried away with the medium and sometimes lose the essence of the simplicity of what really makes something memorable. Like Rajiv just mentioned that Cadbury's using technology, but he's not so much dazzled by the AI as much as what they did with the AI, right? And that is what made it memorable for him. I think that is a constant struggle to keep reminding ourselves and our teams that we have to keep it, we have to use everything that's available, but we have to keep it simple. So that's the one reflection I have in this whole content sphere. And I think the other thing is, how do we pull it all together so that it speaks of a larger storytelling narrative rather than going in diffuse directions. Like we spoke about Nike, three of us spoke about Nike. So it's quite obvious why we speak about Nike, because we have experienced one uniform, universal, story around Nike. It's about everybody feels like an athlete and they encourage everybody and so on and so forth. I think these are the two, I would say, reflections. And the more we have started to become clear about what we need to say and how, and the more consistent we have become about those messages, the more success we are experiencing. It's just a continuous journey. I think that would be my reflection around our own experiences with content.
Agreed. Rajiv, in your category, in the overall, your category, how does this content creation this works?
Yeah, Devesh, I will divide our product range, the wide product portfolio, in two kinds of products. One is the functional products, like our spices, cat spices, and one is the non-functional, which is more impulse, like pulse candy, silver pulse, pass, and all that. In functional products, it's very important that we have to tell some benefits to the consumer, in fact. Either it can be the product benefit, or there can be some messaging around our brand core or essence of some narrative which go well with the brand, in fact, so that consumer starts establishing a relationship with the brand, in fact.
Correct.
Consumer is interested in that content which is simple, easy to understand, and in which there is some message for him or some benefit for him. On the other hand, there are certain kind of products which are more impulse. There, our main objective is to create some the consumer's mind. It should trigger some curiosity, it should trigger some engagement level, so that he should try the product. When he will try the product, then he will love the product. Then definitely he will be our customer forever, in fact.
Right.
There we do the activities. Like every brand definitely has been defined on some particular brand core essence, with like the any brand team does and all that. And around that essence, the core essence of the brand, we develop some engagement activity, social media post, some influencer activity, as well as some gamification and all that. Due to the consumer starts interacting with the brand, in fact, it creates some excitement. And that is a general strategy we have seen. And it has really done good for our various brands.
Interesting. Soumya, when we create content, at large scale, okay, it's important that, the messaging is always the same, across the channels. Okay. It is creatively done, like Priyank also mentioned that, it should be simple, it should be effective, and it should be, easily understandable by the audiences. So what I have seen, and what during my previous conversations with, a lot of brands and brand managers, is that, that when teams are, when multiple teams are working together to create content, the communication becomes a little, distorted. The messaging becomes a little distorted. How do you ensure that, that it remains the same throughout and across all the channels?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects to this. One is obviously the content part, other is the team part. So I take this question one after the other. I'll try to keep my answers really short.
Right.
So on the content part, I think like a lot of panelists also said that few things don't change. Like people would always want things to be delivered better, cheaper, and faster. That's never going to change. No consumer in any industry is going to say no to either of these things. Sometimes the order of priority would change depending upon which industry you are, but more or less these three remain same. And for us at Snapdeal, because we are a hardcore, value-driven e-commerce company targeting the value audience, so it's very essential that the value part remains the same across all comms. And sometimes, and value is not only about just, screaming at the top of the lungs saying that, hey, we are cheap, we are cheap. That's actually not value, right? Value is always saying that you are getting a bigger bang for your buck.
Correct.
And also demonstrating value. And like, if you look at two brands at the two different spectrums, say Apple at one end, which is premium customers, and DMart, right? If you speak to customers of either, if you speak to an Apple guy that, why do you spend that premium of 30,000 over an Android phone? that guy will say, nahi, isme value hai. Whatever the value they derive, privacy, XYZ. And same about DMart. So it's not that value is only exists in one customer, profile and does not exist at the other. So that things then become sort of the cornerstone, something that is constant all across. Now, on top of it is the layer of culture, which is obviously different. That will, especially because in e-commerce, and we are a lifestyle value e-commerce, so style, fashion, sensibilities matter from geography to geography. So that's where we have localized teams, and we make sure that those teams are very both from a qualitative point of view, the value part we spoke about, and from a quantitative point of view also, the team is very much told about the beginning and the end. So the beginning is value, the end is the metric, and the middle is what the customization part and the culture or aesthetics, that all lies. And we try to do that with every single agency partners. And today at Snapdeal, we have the marketplace, and we have like some private labels of ours, which are like some 7-8 private labels active at the same point. There are 15 plus agencies we deal with on an everyday basis. So how we figure it out is basically making sure that the objectives are very clear for the other person, for every single stakeholder, both from qualitative and quantitative, and then don't meddle in the middle. Don't try to micromanage that at all. Just do reviews and check whether the metrics are being met and the core sensibility of value is being maintained. Because otherwise, if I feel that a creator or an agency partner sitting in Tamil Nadu, knows less than me about that culture, then I'm mistaken. So, and I can't even comment. The lesser skilled cannot judge the better skilled in whichever space. So pretty much of how we sort of structure it.
Interesting. So Vaibhav, in your category, okay, how do you create that engaging narrative for your customers, which are for your customers? How do you create that engaging content?
Sure. So we are a B2B company, and we focus our communication more towards merchants. But there is this myth that B2B has to be boring, and B2B has to be straight to the point, and you have to sell, you have to talk about functional benefits, etc. But when we were doing our content strategy, and we were looking for proof points, what we understood that at any given point of time, there are only about 5% of our customers who are actually in the market to do a purchase. About 95% will eventually turn out to do a purchase in about 1 year to 3 years. So how do you create a content strategy that is talking to not only just that 5%, but to the overall 100%, right? So with that thought, we have devised a content strategy in two parts. The first part is where we are creating an engaging narrative to reach out to our TG. And the biggest step that we took in that area was to actually partner with Shark Tank, we over-indexed on our brand levers of innovation and trust, and from there. And the other is that for our merchants, we've devised the customer journey, and at every leg of the journey, we have understood what content levers we have, and what is the purpose that at that journey stage, what is the purpose that the customer is looking for. So and accordingly we create content. So for example, if he's at the discovery stage, then he would want to understand what is the solution that we can, what is the solution that Cashfree can offer, or what are the possible things that his business can utilize, maybe not only related to our product, but generally useful for his business. If he's evaluating different platforms, then how have we helped others, that becomes core to the conversation. Or if he's already our customer, then how can he use us to actually get how Soumya was talking about, get maximum output from the bucks.
Yeah.
How can he drive efficiencies, how can he scale his business, how can he grow his business with payments as core to his business. So those are the few things that we have looked at from creating a content strategy.
So how are you driving the efficiencies, with the content that you create? How are you maximizing the efficiency with the content you create, to drive higher growth, to nurture better relations with your.
Yeah. So I think Rajiv did touch upon this, that the content has to serve a value. There has to be a value exchange, right? So for example, and ours is a very dynamic industry, and there is there are tons of regulations coming. There are tons of technology change happening. So, for example, recently there was a digital lending guideline had been launched by the regulator, and as a brand, we understand that guideline and the repercussions it is going to have on our customers, right? So, what we did, for example, is we started putting out pieces of content which talked about how it is going to impact business as usual for a lot of our customers. So we actually handheld some of our customers and guided them and said, hey, this is how you're going to navigate this through, and we are your growth partners, right? So, and I'm giving this as an example because what I'm trying to highlight here is one, value exchange, two, relevance. And once you have that trust, then the customer is going to look forward to that relationship, and it's not only a business relationship, it is a then you're a partner in a true sense.
Right. Just it's pretty clear that all the players that we have present in the panel, they're creating a content at scale, and the volume of the content it's pretty high. So I mean, with the growing number of the media channels, as they have grown, how just Tenovos helps them with a digital asset management solutions, and then what can actually the digital asset management solution can do for brands when they have to, when there's so much of content, how does it helps them in improving their efficiencies, in driving better ROIs and scale their businesses?
Yeah, I'll start by saying, a couple of our panelists mentioned the term value, right? And I think that's very important when it comes to content, right? And very important. I'll share experiences on this side of the planet, right? In North America and all the brands that we're seeing. And now we're, growing in India, and we're seeing very similar asks and challenges that we're trying to help with, right? Because we all know that brands never imagined the growth of content that we're now dealing with. Like 10 years before, we said, well, we've got agencies, right? They deal with content. But now the shift in that older agency only model is changing. There has been a shift, right? Brands are now commissioning their own freelancers, their own creative teams, their own marketing teams. And we all know that content has now taken the center stage, right? For every single brand, whether it's social, digital, e-commerce, in-store. We talked about how you got to have the omni-channel consistent messaging right? And everything is now, every experience is now fueled by digital assets or content, right? If we take a step back, let's step back and say, what exactly are these brands trying to do, right? All they want to do is reach and engage with their customers and grow the brand and make more money, convert to revenue. So if you're a brand, right, this is a question that I always ask. Ask yourself, are you doing that effectively? Are you doing it as good as you would like to do? What is stopping you, right? It's not about just creating content and managing it, right? It's how are you activating that content? Are you just manually, are you a content machine that's constantly creating content and uploading it to YouTube, Twitter, and hoping that something will click, right? Or are you looking at the outcome of those investments, right? We may be making, let's say, we talked about folks making many pieces of content. Maybe a brand makes 1,000 pieces of content a year. Do they know, because we know all 1,000 didn't work, do they know which 20 pieces of content actually worked, right? How does a brand know? And if those 20 pieces of content, which campaigns did that work in? Which channels did it work in? Who clicked on it? Why did it engage? Did it convert to revenue? How much? So they can map all of that back to the investment. So here at Tenavis, we've kind of coined, we talk about ROI. We've coined a term called ROA, return on asset. Because, ROI, you buy an investment, you're looking at that investment as a whole, whereas content is what's driving and fueling your revenue nowadays. So every piece of content is got to have its own ROI. And that's what we call ROA. And that's something that's resonating extremely well. We think like Samit talked about the culture, right? The localization, understanding that, something that you built for North India is not going to work or engage as well in South India. So how do we actually know that information? How do we know that, hey, this piece of content engaged extremely well in North India? How do we make that work for South India, right? These are the tools that the modern DAM systems that can provide you, right? The brand now need to think differently. They need to think with content first strategy that is based on outcomes. So traditionally, if you had a content problem, you go out and buy a content management solution, you put it inside, and you're hoping you've got some search capability and you can reuse and you're done with it, right? The world has changed. It's an outcome-based model. And that's about where the innovation stopped and we stepped in, having worked and dealing with the brands like Disney and Fox and Warner Brothers and Netflix and all of these and Prime Video. We kind of set out to build a modern platform that can not only provide those content management capability, but take that and provide and convert that into an activation platform, right? Activation with optimization of experiences, providing you with that performance-based insights. For example, if you're about to post something or launch a campaign in South India and you select a piece of video or an image, right? A platform should be smart enough to say, hey, don't choose this image, right? We tried this and it didn't work. It works extremely well in North India, but here are some recommendations of things that work really well in South India based on what we know. These are the type of tools that the brands should be looking at, right? And to your question about when should they be looking at, when should they get a solution like this? I would say as early as possible, right? DAM is a content hub or digital asset management, right? That can connect to other systems. I always call this, it's like plumbing of your house. You're building a house, right? You're gonna lay out the plumbing, right? You're gonna build a house. And then later on, you say, you know what? I don't like the plumbing, or I've missed the plumbing. You're gonna go and rip the whole house apart. It's doable. It's gonna be cumbersome and expensive. So if you're just planning your house, if you're planning your strategy, DAM should be a fundamental component and a central hub of that technology.
Interesting. Ravi, coming to you on this one, brands already have a lot of access to, Dropboxes, share solutions like Google Drive, OneDrive, and multiple solutions there. Why do they need another DAM solution, to be added to it?
See, what we are saying is it's not just about to stashing away some content somewhere and then transporting it somewhere and then retrieving it. It's not just about that.
Okay.
It is about when does it become an asset? The moment you stash away something somewhere, it's a content. When does a piece of content become an asset? When you understand what is there in it, whether it is audio, video, sound, image, whatever it is, if you have enrichment around it, which can be searchable. Now, when you compare that with the insights that Jas was just talking about, how has it performed? Where has it been used? When was it used? There's a variety of information that's when the content becomes an asset, right? Now, and then you would want to use an inbuilt orchestration platform for crafting a variety of workflows where different people will interact on that. Now, that does not exist on a store and sync platform, right? A sync and share kind of things. So we need to make the job very simple for these professionals who are going to deal with the assets, and they shouldn't have to think about how to do it. They shouldn't have to go in and out of context, right? So on the one place they are storing it, retrieving it. On the other place they are doing some business around it. If it all should happen in one place,
Okay.
those tools are not needed.
Right. Priyank, like Jas mentioned, putting together a framework, for measuring the content, so that, you are able to effectively measure how it has turned into an asset, what's the kind of, ROA it, gives you. So have you put in a framework for that, at Tata 1mg for the content, for the digital content?
I would say there is no strong framework to identify that.
Okay.
But I think, as Jas and Ravi mentioned, so let me tell you what we do. We produce a lot of content, Every day we are putting something on social media. Every day we are putting something on YouTube. And interestingly, some days we have seen that some of the content is working well for us.
Right.
And some of the content for some of the days are not working well for us. And let me give you the metrics also.
Sure.
So when I say, if I put something on, let's take an example, Instagram. Suppose there is a World's Heart Day, and I'm putting some information on World's Heart Day. We have seen that if the information is little presented in a more creative way, more engaging way, the traction or the engagement of that particular post goes up.
Okay.
But if we give the information which is in a more, I would say, plain way, or more of a medical way, then I think that becomes little mundane for the customers to comprehend that. So I think couple of learnings are there, but in terms of any playbook, in terms of any concrete framework that is present, which tells us that, hey, whether this will work or not, I think that is not here. That is not there in the company. But I think, yeah, that's a very good point that Jas and Ravi mentioned, that if we can identify that this particular creative can work better and this will not work better, that's a good strategy to follow, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, Chala, in your opinion, what should be that kind of framework, that helps you determine, like Priyank mentioned a couple of points, and, what should be that framework in your opinion, that helps you, identify the ROA on the assets?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I think the perspective of that Jas shared around content as an asset, rather than thinking it of just as money, like investments and so on. I think that's a very interesting perspective. I must admit that I'd like to think a little bit more around this before I share my views. But let me tell you what what's the current experience that we have. See, I think what Jas and Ravi are talking about is very interesting. As a brand marketer, having done a lot of content in my life, is a lot of the learning and a lot of the memory is human today. Right? If a person goes out, or if a person moves a different role, it's almost like the brand completely starts over. Right? And content, kind of, if it's parked in some folder, it's practically dead out there. Right? I think how to keep content alive, and how do you keep it not just from a reuse perspective. Reuse is great, but how can it inform, in a very structured way, what comes after it, I think is a fantastic perspective. I must say that this is something we do not have it in a systematic way.
Mhm.
It's very human and it's very individual at this stage. But this is a very interesting proposition and something that definitely as it develops, we'll be very keen on understanding more.
Interesting. Vaibhav, how do you look at the digital assets that you create, and measure the efficiency of it, when it goes out on the channels?
It depends on what's the goal of that particular content piece. Like we do a lot of blogs, and there the metrics are very different as compared to when
Absolutely.
we're doing a YouTube video. And like I said, the purpose of those content pieces are very different.
Mhm.
But I think going back to what Jas and Ravi have highlighted, I think the discovery of your own content is a huge problem. Rediscovery of your own content is a huge problem, and I think all marketers
Mhm.
do grapple with it. I remember in one of the previous stints, we wanted to reuse a content, and this was something that was done about 8 years back in the brand. Most of the folks had left, and we had to literally spend about 2 weeks to get to that particular piece of content. Now coming to a solution which is a digital asset management solution, which can help you identify and say how it performed earlier. If you have that flexibility, it will actually be quite useful. So that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Interesting. Rajiv, what's your thought? In your category, when content goes out on digital, is there a framework that is there in your mind, that you use? And maybe you can, give us an idea about, when when traditional pieces of advertising are released on traditional channels, there are, when a campaign works and when a campaign doesn't work, okay, there's always an analysis in the boardroom that this particular television 30-second work, this print ad work, we received let's say, if we have come up with a print ad, people came back to our stores, or a big outdoor, did work or not. So how does it work, in digital versus the traditional way? And is there a framework that is there for a digital in your mind?
The way, first of all, what I strongly feel that whether it's traditional or digital, we have to we should be very clear about the objective of that content or advertisement. One objective can be directly the sales related. Other can be that imagery, brand imagery development. When we talk about brand imagery development, so there has to be some core essence of the brand defined. There has to be brand architecture in place, and on certain assets, on certain core essence of the brand, we have to build the brand.
Okay.
So one is that the objective is sale. Whether my sales increase or not after that content or advertisement, I have to measure that.
Okay.
But many a time that it may not result in direct sales, in fact.
Okay.
But objective has to be that brand imagery development. So for that, we generally do the brand track that whatever the imagery before a particular content or campaign at all, and what is the imagery after that, in fact. Whether the brand proposition on which I have positioned the brand, whether that increase or not on certain numbers. Number two, that effectiveness of content also depends a lot on in the terms of CTR also, like how many people have interacted, how many of them further advocated, or they have further shared, and all that.
Okay.
But all of them, I feel is very important. That needs to be dimensionalized, in fact, because there is a variety of contents in digital, on traditional media, and all that.
Right.
Also with one singular perspective, in fact.
Correct.
The brand proposition we define, whatever the brand essence we define. So it has to. So all these things basically we take into account, that whether in terms of CTR percentage, in terms of that further sharing, the number of consumers which they have engaged with our post, and in TV definitely that what was my reach, what was my like, and all these things we map through the brand track analysis time to time, that where my brand is moving, in fact. But what is my desired positioning, and the consumer is also understanding my brand and relating it with my brand on that particular positioning or not, because numbers may be sometimes very lucrative, that find that so many people, they have seen my ad, they have engaged with my content, but in the desired direction in which I want to understand my brand, I want them to interact well with my brand. That is also very important. Otherwise, there may be dilution of the brand impact.
Right, right. Soumya, what are your thoughts, on, what are the kind of framework, that you put to, gauge the effectiveness of the content that is coming out on your channels, at Snapdeal?
Although we are not using any digital asset management tool as of now, but we have the traditional ways of doing it. So especially on social, because we are a lifestyle brand, so actually inquiries about price is a big thing, because what we have realized is, in value, what matters is that the product needs to look so good, and people need to be enticed, and price has to be a delight. So we generally never speak about the price. We only speak about the the style of the product. So all those inquiries really matter. That means people, basically that essentially means that you have gone one step below in the funnel, one step down rather in the funnel. And secondly, I think engagement rate is a huge thing for us internally to judge whether that content worked or not, across whether it's a traditional comm or social comm, because reach can always be increased and engagement can also be as reach increases, engagement will also by default increase, but the proportionality is something that can be checked through engagement rate.
Interesting. Just, you heard everyone's viewpoints, and, how they're, gauging the efficiency of the digital content which is going out at that. So according to you, what should be the framework, that should be set, to gauge the efficiency of the digital content that is going out?
I think it's important for brands to realize that when you build this framework, you got to have a content strategy that is a data first, right, based on outcomes. The second is, if you were to go and look for a solution, for example, right, you got to understand that it has to support the framework that you're thinking, right? Because if you go out and buy System X and your strategy and framework that you've built does not jive with it, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So one of the things that brands think about, I'll give you an example of Netflix, right? How does Netflix, regardless of where you are in the world, know exactly what shows or what series or what films are working? And when we log in India versus Canada, it shows me the top 10 in Canada, in India, in Delhi. How do they know that? And their framework is essentially, their strategy involves having control of your content, right? And that involves a delivery mechanism, a delivery framework that is key to their strategy, right? So tools like a content management systems are siloed, right? They're just holding content. Now, when you have a content hub, like we call ourselves, Tenovus is a content hub. A definition of a hub is not only is it supposed to hold content, but think of FedEx, right? Logistics. What is a hub? A hub is something that has content, but it easily connects to all the different endpoints. Enterprises don't just have one system. They've got 10, 20, 30 different marketing and enterprise systems that they're dependent on. So when you have a content hub, you have to ensure that it is easily able to connect and talk to the other systems, the other endpoints, so they can get that communication back. Number two, your delivery has to be part of the framework and control over that. So for example, we have a native built-in, what we call the content delivery network, meaning that we can deliver, just like Netflix, we can deliver content on your behalf. So when we're hosting the content and we're sending it out to email campaigns and social media and your website, we know exactly what is happening with that content. When somebody views it, when somebody clicks on it, right? We're constantly getting that metric, that performance data back into the platform. Now, here's an example. You say, well, you might think that, well, we can do that by going into YouTube's or Google Analytics, right? You can, but look at the effort. If you've got a single image, we'll use a single image as that. You want to use this at 30 different places. You got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got your own site, you've got a commerce site. Imagine having to keep somebody looking at that content from each channel and trying to bring that back and putting it on a spreadsheet and making sense of that. So new tools like Tenovus, what they allow you to do is not only store and create, creatives can manage that content inside, build it, but it can automatically publish it to those 30 channels and deliver it and keep tabs on it. So now all 30 are feeding information in real time back against that one piece. And that's how we build that return on asset. Because now you've got a data profile, you've got a true view, 360 view of that piece of content. Now you can look at it and say, you know what? Worked well on Instagram, didn't work well on e-commerce, didn't work well on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Based on them, now we layer in content intelligence, which I was talking about, right? So things like analytics is one thing, and there are many systems out there that can do that, right? Reporting, collecting, it's what you do with those analytics is where the magic comes in, right? So now taking the analytics, that data, and layering in content intelligence and saying, hey, don't use this in this market because it didn't work very well. Or let's use these pieces of content for, you know, an IPL match in Delhi because it worked extremely well, but don't use it in Mumbai because it didn't work very well, right? Having that level of AI-centric knowledge and insights that marketers and brands can tap into immediately so they can respond to their competition and excel. And that is the value that we're seeing on how they're delivering their connected frameworks and strategies.
You know, just, you know, from what I can make out is that, you know, analytics plays a very, very heavy role in this system. You know, the more the analytics is coming in, we merge in with the creatives, and then, you know, after, you know, one, twice, and thrice, you know, with more and more machine learning, it kind of improves and gives you a better result. So Ravi, how does, you know, empowering that data with creative, empowering that data to the creative team, you know, helps in building a better, efficient mechanism, you know, to deliver better content that engages with the user?
See, you said it right. So you have, when you have enablement in terms of this is the asset, and there are insights accompanying the asset. Where has it been used? How has it been used? How did it work? That is one part of it. Even though you asked me about how will it help, I want to bring out yet another element of it, which is important. Now,
Right.
Is it allowed to use this content here? Okay, meaning any content has so many different stakeholders in creating it and operating it. So you have celebrities, you have photographers, you have so many other companies. Every one of them will have various kind of contracts. Now, how do you manage the legality of it? How do you manage the, you know, how do you avoid penalties? In fact, this morning I'm in Mumbai today, and I met somebody who was saying, I mean, I was just touching on it. He said, this is not tomorrow's problem. Here in Mumbai, I am facing it today. Because they use a font which was created by some agency somewhere, which they were allowed to use for some duration, but unknown to anybody. Like many people said in this call today, you know, it's somebody's memory. Somebody is aware of what to do with. But if those people move on, the rest of the guests do not know what is associated with it. So how do we solve these problems? So I'm answering your question a little differently. So Jas talked about the insights already, but the more important part is, am I allowed to use it correctly? Am I inviting trouble, penalties by misusing this? So we will help you with the rights management part of it in the solution by incorporating a very complex framework of rules out of the box, which can further be customized. Okay. I thought it was important for us to let that be known.
No, absolutely. You know, so before I, close this session, you know, I want to ask this question to everybody. You know, every brand is trying to, you know, crack personalization at scale, and, you know, they want to, crack personalization in terms of messaging. But now we are going a step ahead in, you know, how we can crack personalization in terms of, you know, creatively, so that, you know, when, for example, Priyank is, you know, sending out content to me, it is able to, I can engage more with that content, and say he's able to understand more about, you know, what I like, what I do not like, so that I can engage more with that particular content. So what advice do you share in terms of, you know, creating those best practices, you know, for driving better personalization of content? Priyanka, let's start with you first on this.
See, Devesh, what I have seen, the journey of personalization. Earlier, it was who is your customer.
Right.
Then it came know well your customer. But
Mhm.
now it is predict the behavior of the customer.
Absolutely.
What the customer is now going to do. So I think that's a journey that we have seen in the process of personalization in healthcare. In Tata 1mg, if you talk about personalization is very important, and we have a lot of use cases for personalization.
Mhm.
A person who is from is having some particular type of disease, then I think we through the analysis of data, we can definitely take out and make a cohort out of it, and can upsell or cross sell the relevant communication to that. But I think the key is what communication is important, or what type of content, or what type of asset. Now it's an interesting word. Now I will be using the particular word now. So what type of asset we should definitely be
Right.
communicating. That's the core of this particular whole strategy that we are talking about.
Right.
So as far as if you take my 2 cents, I would say it should be very much in line with the expectations of the customer, if you can predict that. And secondly, it should add some value in the customer's life. It should not be something I have seen it and I have closed it. It should not be like this. It should add certain value, and it should be little intriguing to understand what is the content all about. Hey, read the content. Certain value should be added in the consumer's life. I think this is the things that I want to say in the end.
Right. Soumya, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's a like personalization at scale. We are using some of the AI tools that are available today, especially for the and for supply chain management. With respect to social media, I think a while ago we spoke about the Cadbury example. I think that's a great thing for great thing for marketing. But I think there's a lot of scope, especially in lifestyle space, to talk about live events. Also in pharma, because both these industries are dependent on live events. So I don't see anyone doing it, but I really hope that at some point we are ourselves able to do it. That, say somebody's wedding coming up, somebody's, birthday coming up. So there's a lot of scope to personalize content through AI and nudge them towards, or a slight reminder of what the value proposition of the brand is and why they should maybe transact.
Interesting. Rajiv, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Devesh, if I see that almost 25 years back, there used to be only one TV in one house, in fact. And all the family members, they have to watch only that program only, which used to be Chitrahar or movies or whatever it was, in fact.
Right.
It's a multi-screen phenomena, in fact. Everybody will have a device, one mobile phone, one laptop, or maybe one iPad. So when there is a facility, when there is a convenience, when there is a provision, then definitely everybody in every household, they will like to watch the content which they like, in fact. Typically, I see in the night, in fact, if there are 4 family members, so one of them will be on mobile, one of them iPad, one on television, or one on laptop, in fact, or maybe whichever way. So definitely a marketer also has to develop the content as different consumer segments in which they are catering to, in fact. Your consumer has a choice now to either to watch the content or not to watch the content. It cannot be the most viewed, in fact. So we also have the D2C platform also. We have the CRM club also. We are trying to identify the different consumers' behaviors, lifestyles, and developing the cohorts, in fact.
Correct.
The data, this kind of data will be very important. It's already quite important, and in the coming time, it will be much more important. The marketer, they have to serve to the different consumer in terms of offering the value proposition in terms of content as per the customer's choice and lifestyle and psychographics. They cannot force anyone.
Interesting. Weber, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, no, so I think as digital marketers in the digital age, I think we have the ability and the visibility of the data and the audiences that we are able to prepare through various channels and campaigns and communications. And our role is to, develop cohorts and map those cohorts with the right personas and the right communication. So as marketers, we do that. We spend a lot of time in developing the software attributes of the persona, and then we create a content around those attributes, and hence, going back to your earlier question, that how do you measure the effectiveness or efficiency of those content pieces, and what we've seen is that the more time you spend on understanding the customer, the more time you spend on understanding the attributes, where he's hanging out, what is the interest, and the more time you spend there, the better performances we have seen on our pieces of content.
Right. Chela?
I think by and large, my thoughts have been captured. I think the only thing I would say is, I think the entire evolution is, we are very much a part of it. And I think the only way to stay on top of it is to, to learn continuously. I think all I would say is, while personalization is a need, we're also noticing that people are going back to the classics. People are wanting stuff that does not change. So there is what we're realizing is communication, personalization, both in terms of what needs to be spoken and when it needs to be provided. I think that is going to get even more important and more tech and more precise. But on the product side, I think we've got to, I mean, this is my realization. I think too much of, I would say, movement there is not necessarily something that I have seen our consumers at least appreciate. So we're consolidating around a lot of products. I'll give you an example. In close to 900 odd SKUs that we have got, about 16 of them contribute to 80% of our revenues, and those are the classics. Okay, a lot of effort goes into launching the new vanilla flavor or whatever that might be. Everybody's very busy around that. But consumers again and again voting, saying that just give me the stuff that I like, don't mess with it. So I think this thing has to be seen, as it's not just a marketer's view, right? I think we're also consumers. And I would like to bring that layer of understanding around, what do we, pick the right insight and not just become, a victim of the fad. That's really my reflection on this.
Interesting. Ravi, what do you think? Are brands, looking at this personalization part for the creative side also?
So let me answer it a little differently. Personalization, the word starting with a P, has to be looked in context with the other word, which is again with a P, privacy. So too much of personalization, and let's not be intrusive, let's not be pesky, let's not be irritating to the target audience. So somewhere in between, you have to treat the customer or the audience with empathy. So whatever strategy we develop for addressing the audience, we should keep in mind, if I were to draw an analogy, look at the guy who discreetly stays there in a fancy 5-star restaurant. He lets you do your business, which is enjoying the dinner. But he's always around right when he knows that you need him. So that's the kind of thing. How do you fine-tune the personalization with empathy is what I would want people to think about.
And finally, Jas, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Personalization, everybody wants to do it. My only, and what we see with brands here and what we share is, I always say, don't just create content blindly just because you have to. And most brands are just saying, the more content you create, the better you are. And that is not true, right? It's how well you know your content is the important part. Where to use that content is the important part, right? So the other thing is that by you asking your team, your employees are everything, right? If you're going to add more friction to their regular tasks, you're not going to get the value. You're not going to get the outcomes that you need, right? So I always say, when you're bringing in, building a new strategy, bringing in new systems, right? Think about user adoption, because that's what's going to make you or break you. We go to Amazon or Flipkart or Facebook. We don't have to go take a course on learning how to put a tweet down or post an image. It's very intuitive, right? So having that intuitiveness, when you're bringing in and building your strategy, have a content-centric, data-led strategy, introduce tools that are user-friendly and intuitive for your teams, because they're going to one that's going to be building and driving it. And the most important thing is, don't rely on systems and tools that treat your data as a second-class citizen. Okay. You need to take control of your data and make sure you're treating it as a first-class citizen, right? So when you're connecting that data to your content, it should be treated as a first-class citizen. So you have full control of that. And you need to build that content strategy. And you start by taking control of your content, making sure that you're starting to build a hub to store your content or collect that content in a single place, so that you can then layer your new pipelines, your new processes on top of that, and start to monetize and deliver that content. And my only advice, and I always say that as well to the brands, is don't do a big bang approach, right? Always define that journey, that phased approach that you can chew on, right? Don't bite on something that you can't chew on, right? And there are many examples, many of our customers, all the way something as small as a startup, all the way to another customer like Prime Video or others that are managing millions of SKUs in their company. They've all started somewhere with that same content first, taking control of their content first. So that's my only advice, that based on the experience that I've seen.
Great. Some very lovely insights and some very interesting facts that came out from this discussion. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining today and sharing your insights. It was really interesting to find out how we can create content, and brands need to create content at scale to connect with the audience, but it's equally important how we can create it more effectively to engage with our audiences. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Devesh. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.